Camping and backpacking has got a whole lot lighter with the rise of trekking pole tents. So what is it about these shelters that's causing them to explode in popularity? So let's go camping and find out what all the fuss is about. So this is my first time out since the West Highland Way, and I brought a trekking pole tent out with me today. That style of tent was quite popular on that trip. So I put a poll out asking what tent I should use today, and it seems that a trekking pole tent is popular with my friends over on Patreon as well. So I just wanted a really easy going camp today. The hiking is 1.5 miles, 2 mile tops. So I didn't really need the trekking poles. So if you don't really use trekking poles, then it's probably not the best idea to get a trekking pole tent. By the time you've factored in the weight of the poles and the shelter, you may as well get a tent with poles. But I find trekking poles are brilliant, especially on the longer hikes and down the hills. A trekking pole tent tends to be non-freestanding, so you need to be careful where you pitch it. You can't just pitch it up and then move it around to get that perfect spot like you can with a freestanding tent. So because trekking pole tents don't have dedicated poles, overall they tend to be lighter. But another positive is that they tend to be really easy to pitch, so lots, including this one, you just pitch it out into a rectangle. I've literally only used 4 pegs and just pop the poles in. So this particular tent has got little grommets in the top for pitching it tip facing up. This is the Durston X Mid, by the way. So here's the grommets where your pole tip fits. I've actually put like a little shoe on there. You get these from Tarp Tent. The shoe fits on the handle of your trekking pole, just holds it in place. So the reason that I prefer that, under normal circumstances, if your tent is really well guyed out, there's not much chance of your pole tip coming out of that little grommet. But if for any reason the wind picks up, for example, a peg pulls out of some soft ground, and this allows the material to just flap around, move wherever it wants, then there's the potential for the pole to slip out, and those tungsten tips are just going to shred your fly sheet. There we go, it's all pitched out, belts and braces. However, if there's no wind really, you can just get away with the 4 corner pegs. What a stunning evening. Absolutely perfect conditions for camping. Gorgeous greens, tinge of purple, and then you've got the cotton grass just giving some highlights. This tent's definitely the easiest to pitch out of all the ones that I've got. I can see why it's so popular. So also trekking pole tents, very robust. Don't get me wrong, it's never going to compete with a 4-season Hilleberg Solo or something like that. But it's basically, the way it's designed is you're clamping it to the ground with 2 vertical poles coming up. It's basically a pyramid style tent. Really robust design. Oh, the midges are out. Didn't get one in Scotland, but there's loads around here. As long as your pegs stay in, it's not going anywhere. This one's got an asymmetric design. So the poles are on an angle to the rest of the tent. And then these guy lines here, they give a really strong ridge line across there. Midge central. Let's get those reinforcements out. They're not too bad if you don't stand still. It's quite spacious in here. Can you see what I mean about the asymmetric? So the inner Sort of runs corner to corner. That means you get two really large vestibules and a door at either side, so depending which way the wind's blowing, stuff like that, you could maybe cook in this side if the wind's coming from over there, and vice versa. I think they've gone now. Let me take this off. That's better. Let's have a gander inside. Easily fit a wide pad in there. It's like a weird shape at the end now, do you know, because it's asymmetric. So you get a nice bit of storage space at either end. You tend to get decent headroom in trekking pole tents as well. Depending on the style, either the poles are in the centre of the tent, or like this one, there's a pole at either side, so you get good headroom at one side, same at the other side as well. So if you need to switch ends or get dressed, plenty of room for all that. You can see how much room there is now. Literally acres. And you've got the same again on the other side. This camera picking up those rays. Just want to take a minute to thank Squarespace for sponsoring the video again today. Squarespace is the #1 place to go if you want to have a go at building a website all by yourself. You don't need any experience in web design or coding. You simply choose one of their ready-made templates, upload your own photos and add some text, and from our experience, within a couple of hours, you've got a website. The platform's got built-in e-commerce if you want to set up shop, or there's online storage if you want to set up video courses or a gallery for your photography. You can even set up memberships and subscription services. It doesn't really matter what your business is, Squarespace has got something for you. So if you want to have a go at easily building a website of your own, then click the link in the description below, or head over to squarespace.com/Paul Messner. You'll get a totally free trial and then 10% off your first purchase. Let's have a breather from those midges. First proper test for my sleeping pad mod. We might get a bit of rain tonight. I don't know about the rest of the world, but trekking pole tents seem to be pretty new to the market here in the UK. If I think back 8 or 10 years ago, you know, you're talking Van Gogh Banshees and maybe some of the old Force 10 tents with a frame. Lots of tunnel tents and semi-geodesic tents that you would think are more suited to UK conditions. But it turns out for the most part, trekking pole tents are perfectly adequate for what we do here in the UK. Seems like we're starting to catch up with the rest of the world. Hikers are starting to wear trail running shoes. All of a sudden the Pennine Way's become a through hike instead of a long distance walk. Ultralight gear is becoming incredibly popular. I've got a quilt in there, look. There's hardly anywhere in the UK that manufactures quilts. So a lot of these things you've got to get shipped in from America. There are a few places like Valley and Peak that started stocking this kind of thing now. And then of course you've got all the brands from China like Nature Hike or 3FUL that are giving you this kind of option for a reasonable price. Brings me on to the price a little bit. You would think that a trekking pole tent would be cheaper, you know, because it's not got any poles that have had to be manufactured. It doesn't use any more material. It seems easier for some of the attachments like inners. They haven't got to fit around poles and things like that. But they're no cheaper than tents that come with poles. And then you've got to buy your trekking poles as well. Obviously, unless you've got some already. I think they're cottoning on to the popularity. Some of these like Lanchans, for example, they used to be about 60 quid at first, the Lancham one. Now, I'm not sure exactly, but I think it's at least double that. First couple of drops of rain. I'm going to batten down the hatches. I've been in here about an hour. Still no rain. Winner. I think I'm going to get my head down. It is quite cosy in here. There's a decent amount of room. I do like having this headroom at both ends. Because trekking poles are a bit lighter, you can usually get bigger tents for the same sort of weight, so you can get a 2-person tent with plenty of room inside for around 1 kilo. Right, I'll catch you in the morning. Don't think we got any rain. The sunrise is due any minute. It's worth setting the alarm for anyway. It's just started raining. Oh well, back in there. It seems to have perked up a bit. It's just turned 6:15. It's a bit chilly. As expected, no issues with the tent. Depending on how much ventilation you want, you can actually raise and lower the pole a little bit, and then you just lengthen, these tie-out points. It just raises the tent fly up a little bit. That gives you better airflow. But if you want to batten down the hatches a bit, just lower the poles and then tighten those down to the ground. Ticking a few boxes, these trekking pole tents, aren't they? So depending on the design, most trekking pole tents, they tend to have the pole right down the middle. So that can restrict your access a little bit, getting in and out of the door. These ones are offset, so it makes it much easier getting in and out. So I was trying to think last night of the first trekking pole tents that I kind of saw, in the UK anyway, and it was the Lux Hex Peak. I saw 1 or 2 of them knocking around on YouTube, and the first one that I got was a Six Moons design. Skyscape Trekker, I think it was called. That one used 2 trekking poles as well, and then it had a little sort of tube that linked the 2 together. It was a really unique design, and in fact it was the first camping video that I ever put on YouTube. Quite a lot of the solo trekking pole tents, they only utilise 1 pole. Tends to go in the middle. It is more like just a small pyramid, that though. Something like a Lancham one, they tend to be not quite as roomy inside. A little bit more difficult to pitch than the 2-pole ones, in my opinion anyway. Although there isn't a lot in it. Although I didn't take this on the West Highland Way, last year I did the Cumbria Way. It was brilliant for multi-day trips. I always use trekking poles anyway on long distance hikes, but if it's wet like today, it's really easy to unclip these. You separate the inner from the outer so you can keep the inner dry. There's usually a clip on either pole and then just one in each corner. I'm not bothering with that today though, I'm just going to dry everything out when I get back home. So you can get trekking pole tents in a variety of different materials. This one is a sil poly, you can get them in sil nylon, polyester, even in DCF now. So the X-Mid Pro, which is the Dyneema version of this, comes in at around 444 grams now, which is crazy. I would love to try one of those. However, I don't think the bank balance will allow it. Not sure if that's fog or rain. Might have to dip back in there again. So before I pack everything away, I'll give you a quick rundown of my thoughts on trekking pole tents in general. I think they're a great option if you already use trekking poles and you're going to be saving a fair amount of weight on the pole structure that you get with regular style tents. For this reason, they tend to be quite a bit lighter. However, trekking poles do have a weight to them, but if you're carrying those anyway, it makes sense. Most trekking pole tents are really easy to pitch. A lot like this, you simply pegging out 4 corners and then just propping up your poles to the right height. Then it's just a case of pegging out a few guy lines just to give it that little bit of extra strength and structure. Speaking of structure, these pyramid style tents are really sturdy. They are basically clamping the fly down to the ground from a central pole, so you can't really push that down unless you put some mega pressure on it. Whereas the thin hooped aluminium poles tend to flex and bend, this is going nowhere as long as you peg it out really well. Obviously, depending on the tent, you do tend to get really good headroom. This one in particular has got it at both ends. You do get quite a lot of room inside for the weight when it comes to a trekking pole tent. On most of the tents, the pole height can be adjusted to give you extra ventilation, or you can peg things down closer to the ground to make it more storm-proof. Trekking pole tents come in different sizes, 1 person, 2 person, although I can't think of a 3 person plus off the top of my head. Let me know in the comments if you know of one. I was interrupted then. I was about to say that these tents are also pretty good in the wind. So the way that the geometry and the angles are set up, it distributes, the wind across the faces of the tent. Obviously, if it is really windy, you do not want to be, pitching side on, because that's a large panel there. But from the end, and especially a corner like that, you're breaking the wind naturally. Breaking wind naturally. You get the point. There's also a variety of materials to choose from polyester all the way up to Dyneema, depending on what your preferences are. These can be incredibly lightweight, as I've mentioned, 440 grams for the Dyneema version of this. The Dyneema is obviously more expensive, but you can get trekking pole tents for under £100. I'll put links to a selection of different tents in the description below. Forgot to mention earlier, you can get these in both double skin and single skin version. So as I've already mentioned, it's usually really easy to separate the inner from the outer if you want to keep them apart, for example, if it's raining. The single skin tents tend to be a little bit larger inside, so you're not touching the outer fly with your sleeping bag or anything. There's usually a sewn-in ground sheet with a little channel where any condensation can run down and drip onto the outside through a little bit of mesh, so you're not getting condensation on your bathtub floor. They are a little bit of a hybrid, so they have got an inner bit there that's sewn onto the fly sheet, so you've got full bug protection as well. Should have packed up 10 minutes ago, it's just started raining again. So packing away is also really easy, even when it's a bit windy. Because you've got everything pegged out, just drop your poles. The tent can't go anywhere. In fact, the wind's blowing off some of the rain. Same on this side. It's much easier to manage when everything's down at ground level. So as I mentioned yesterday, you have got to be quite particular about where you pitch your tent though, because it's not freestanding. So once it's up, it's up. So if you've pitched on bumps or dips or on a slope, you can't just pick it up and move it to a better location. You would have to unpeg everything and start again. And the pack size is tiny. It'll fit into the top of almost any backpack. So I hope you enjoyed that little trekking pole themed camp. Whatever tent you do decide to use, make sure to leave no trace. And I've been made up if you did all of the like and subscribe and all that kind of thing. It all helps with the YouTube algorithm thingy. Anyway, I'm off. I'll see you next time.